Good morning, everybody. 1st of May. Where's the year gone already? We're halfway through it. Anyway, we carry on. All right, today, last week, let's go over last week's. Last week we spent a fair bit of time sort of prepping all the bits and pieces. Didn't get everything done, so this week we're going to put the whole box together, or the carcass of the box together, and then hopefully we can get onto the drawers. So we'll have a little bit of a look at that towards the end of the show today. I don't know if we'll get to cutting up the timber or dressing the, well, I've dressed all the timber, but that's it over here. You can see it on the side here. So hopefully we'll get to that. But anyway, first up we have to get our framework finished and put together. So over on the side here, you can see I've got 3 boxes. They're the 3-seater ones that we've been working on, and I've been swapping and changing back and forth, allowing gluing time and all that sort of thing. So I've got 3 on the go there. In the meantime, I've been doing these other 2, and these are the ones you've probably seen in the photos. This is where we're up to with those. So there's the rose mahogany one and the coachwood one. Now, they are both in the state that we hope will be at the end of today. So you can see I've got the tops glued on. I've got all the shelving in place. We'll turn the cabinet around. You can see we've got all the backs all finished and nicely polished up. It hasn't got a finish on it or anything like that, but it is quite nice. And then when we look at the other side, you can see we've got all the front is not yet sanded, nearly done, but the inside it's actually got a finish on it. These are all glued in place. The top and the bottom are glued on. So looks quite nice. So these ones here I'm sort of doing in tandem, just to give you an idea of that you can do them in different timbers. So here's the rose mahogany one. You can see it's a lot darker, and when you look at it, it's nice and crisp all around and all that sort of stuff. Got nice dark colour everywhere. Haven't yet sanded the front face of it, but that's going to happen. And the other thing that the difference between the two is the rose mahogany one is actually weighs a whole lot heavier than the coachwood one. Now, the timbers are both a similar density. It's just there's a whole lot more weight in them, and that's something else that you need to take into consideration when you're doing them. So I'll put those back and then we'll get on with the other stuff. Now, what we did last week, we planed the front edge of all of the boards. Now, we planed those, we fitted them into the cabinet and we planed the front edges. Now it's time to fit the whole lot up. Now, if you remember rightly, I said to you early when we did it, was make sure the back was in place. Not screwed in, but just in place. So you can screw that in if you like, put some screws in there. You don't need to use any glue if you don't want to. I tend to use a little bit of glue, and what I'm going to do with this one, instead of putting screws in, I'm going to nail the back in. Now there's 2 different methods of nailing it in. So let me first of all pull it out. You can see the important thing to remember with this is make sure that your corners are down at least flush with the rebate in the back of it. Otherwise the corners sit up and it looks a little bit ordinary. So make sure they're right down, and it's really hard to get them there. One of the tools that Dave Stanton actually sent me was a corner chisel, and I forgot to get it out the other day, so I was going to get it out today, and I just can't remember where I put it. So that's just one of the things that you have with one of the problems you have when you've got a little shop with a lot of stuff in it. So anyway, we'll go from there. So now what I want to do is I'm going to glue and nail the back in place, and I'll show you how I do that. So a little bit of glue. I just have to find, I had I'm going to talk about finishes too later, so we're going to have a little bit of a look at what we do with the finishes. So, gluing the back on, just a little bit of glue. Now don't overdo the glue here, because you really can't get, I've got to open it, you really can't get the glue out. So as you can see, I'm only putting a little bit on the platform. Grab myself a little brush. Now what I did with the brush was I couldn't find, and I'm sure if I looked a little harder I could find some smaller brushes. I actually gave it a haircut and made it a little bit thinner than normal. So now I've got a little brush, and the brush is actually big enough to sit in and get and carry enough glue. And I'm only putting a little bit in the corners here. Put a little dollop here and a little dollop there. So I don't want heaps of glue in here. I know it fits well, so just small amounts of glue. As you can see, it doesn't look very smooth, and that's a good point. A little bit there, a little bit there. A little bit all the way around here. You see, there's not very much used at all. A bit on there. And that's the glue. Now, what I did when I put this together is I marked the top, so it's just a matter of popping that in place. So it fits fairly snug, so it's quite nice. Shift that out of the way. Now, these are the two different techniques that I employ occasionally. I can use little brads like this. Now, the thing about these is that that's the smallest I could find, right? Now, it's 20 millimetres, and you really don't need 20 millimetres because that board is only 4 millimetres thick, right? So if I was using those, start out a little bit wide. Now, a little trick. If you're using timber that's likely to split, turn the nail upside down like that and just blunt it. Just give it a little tap like that. Just take the sharpness off it. That way it won't split your timber. So you'll also see, if you look at it very carefully, what I've done is I've put it in a little bit of an angle. So that way it's going to push into the solid part of the timber and therefore not kick out into the cabinet itself. So I'm only going to put a couple in here. I'll put these two in, and then I will show you. Just blunt this one off. Just do that. Just avoids you splitting. Again, at an angle. And you'll see I didn't bash it all the way down and hit the timber with the mallet, with the hammer. Basically because I want to punch it below the surface, so a little nail punch. And use your nail punch to punch it below the surface. It doesn't have to go very far. Now, bullet head nails will go in quite easily, and you can put a little bit of putty over that if you want to get really fussy with it. So that's the technique I use when I'm using hand nails. So that's nailed in place. Now, if you're using a brad nailer, and I'll just go and get it. That's this little gadget. The brads that I'm using for this, you can actually get them in 15 millimeters, which is quite good because they're only very, very small. You can see that those, they're quite small. So that's sort of 5 millimeters shorter than those. You don't really need a lot of, there's no pressures on the timbers. You don't really need a lot of depth or length to your nails and screws and things like that when you're putting in such a small piece of timber. So when we're putting that in, this is how we do that. So you need to do this very carefully. You want the brad as I haven't got it turned up very high, and you can see they actually sit up a little bit. So if we go back to our punch, and just knock them down a little bit with the punch, they're below the surface. Now when you put the brads in the sides, you need to know where the grooves are or your trenches are, because if you put a nail through and it goes into the trench, which I've done a few times, then it's a good idea to just mark where they are. So I'm going to use a pencil and just put a mark on it. So it's about there.
Or chalk.
Oh, a piece of chalk, yes, you could use a piece of chalk. I'm not going to put many in. I just want to mark these ones here just to make sure I don't put a brad there. So I'll go below that, and that'll be sufficient. I could put one in the middle if I want, but I don't think it's necessary. One in there. I really should have my earmuffs on when I play with that thing. They make a little bit of a noise. Just put these marks on here. Just make sure they're only small marks, and we're going to sand the back of it anyway. So just want to make sure I don't end up putting a nail in a rebate. Again, you'll see that I'm sitting the nail at a little bit of an angle. It's only a shallow angle. It's not a heap of like a 45 degrees or anything like that. So we're around about 30 degrees. Just undo that. And a nail punch. Just knock those in. Now, before I actually put that in there, I've sanded my material to 800 on the inside. So the inside of the box, and you can see I've got a couple of tiny little bits of squeeze out glue there. You can see it in the bottom of the box, just in there. So I just want to get that out before I go any further. I don't want it to dry in there. Find my bit of rag. A little bit up this end as well. Now, one of the reasons that I didn't put lots and lots of glue in there is because I want the timber to be able to move around a little bit. Now, it's not going to go far because it's very, very thin. But it's a good idea to give it the space to go places rather than sort of pressing on all your joint work. Okay, so that's what we look like when we've done. So it just needs a light sand on the back and a coat of finish when we're ready to do that. And I'm not going to do the back of them because I do that later. It's going to be pushed and shoved and laid down on its back and all that sort of thing. So it may end up with some tooling marks on it or something like that. So now our next step is to fit the top and the bottom. I could put a finish on the inside, but I'm going to put the top and bottom on it first, so it looks like I've actually done something today. Okay, so this is the base, and again, remember the centre lines. We've lined up the centre lines. Those centre lines give you your accuracy after you've, or while you're working on it. Okay, so make sure you've got all that all sorted. So I'm flush on the back because that's how I set it up originally. Just got to get that flush. Another way of getting it flush would be to put it down like so. But that doesn't work when you're trying to line a line up. Let's try that again. Right, screws. 4 screws, a screwdriver. So I have my screws, have my screwdriver. I just need to put some glue in so I know everything's going to go in the right place. Now with the glue, this is how I find the easiest way to do it. It's a big surface, right? So squeeze some glue on there. Don't overdo it, just put enough on there. You can see there's not much there. Get yourself a wide spatula, right? Just spread it out with a spatula. You can use a brush if you like. As you can see, there's not a lot there, but there's enough to actually do the job. Again, don't over glue. At times you find that you end up with squeeze out. Probably need a little bit more on there. You can see it's a very thin film of glue. It's not heaps and heaps. I find the Tight Bond 3 works really, really well. So, a question while I'm doing this. A question I was asked last week: where do I get my sandpaper from? I, over a period of time, have sort of collected sandpaper from various places when I go around to shows and stuff like that. But there's a fellow up in Brisbane, the Sandpaper Man. Now we've put a link. Have a look down below. There's a link to his website. He will give you. He's running that business up in Brisbane, and he has all sorts of manner of sandpapers and different grades of stuff. So have a look at what he's got. If you're chasing different sandpapers, you can buy it in bulk from him. So yeah, have a little bit of a look at what he's got. And look, you'll notice I didn't actually screw that right down hard. I've only just got it so it just tweaks it up. If you overdo it with the electric drill, you'll find you'll strip your thread. And so what I do is I just do it up, and then I'll just tweak it up with my... Okay, so there's my base. Turn it over. I'm going to put the top in. Oh, actually, the top will actually go in that way. So when I screw it together, I'll put it around here so you can see what I'm doing. But first thing is to put some glue on. The Looks like a messy operation, doesn't it? But it's not. So that covers pretty much all of the surface. There's lots of ways of doing this. You don't have to do it this way. Find my piece of rag and just wipe the excess off here. Turn that over. Four screws. The screws I'm using, 8 gauge, 18 millimeters. They're actually quite easy to get hold of. This one in. Two. Three. Four. Tweak them up with my screwdriver. In some cases you don't really need the screws in there, but I like to have that mechanical fastening system working as well as the gluing system. And so there we have the box glued and screwed top and bottom, got the back on it, and now what we're doing is we're ready for a finish. Now, finishes. Get rid of the glue. When we put the finish on the inside here, I'm putting the finish on the inside because it's very difficult to get at it. You saw on here, you saw on this one, it's really hard to get a finish in there. I'm flat out getting my fingers in there. Okay, so now, but I've got big chunky fingers. Pam could probably get hers in there, but I won't get mine in there to be able to do any work in there. Okay, so I could brush it in and I could have a little play with it, but it would still be quite messy. So we don't want to do that, and we'll clean it up afterwards. Clean it up as we go. Now, what we don't want to do is we don't want to get any glue in the trench. So we've got to avoid, glue, finish. We don't want to get any finish in the trench. So we're going to put some paper towel in there just so that we don't get a whole heap of finish in there. We're not going to put lots and lots of finish on it, but we'll put enough in there to actually do the job. Now the finishes. Most of the outside of my boxes is finished in either that finish or that finish, and then waxed over the top of it. Now, the Livos oil has a dryers in it. So it dries, it's a countertop oil, it's quite good for outside of cabinets and tops of benches and things and the like. It gives you quite a nice natural finish. So that one can be bought from Jim Carroll's, and there is a link to Jim's store down below, so if you head down there you can actually get the finishes. I'm not sure if he carries excuse me, I'm not sure if he carries the Danish oil. I need to have a little sip after that. I'm not sure if he carries those the Danish oil, but I know he carries this one here. And when I'm working on the inside, I will use this one here. Now, this and this are pretty much the same. Okay, so the natural oil, the Livos natural oil, and this one here have pretty much the same effect. My advice to you is have a play with each of those and put some finish on to a spare piece of wood, just like I've done here. So I've put some finish on there just to see what it looked like. And you can see that it's got quite a nice finish on it. So have a little test with your finishes. I often get asked, which is the best finish to put on things? You know that. You will know what the best finishes are. I can't tell you what sort of finishes that you like. Now, if you like a really glossy finish, or if you like something that's got a sort of a low sheen on it, well then you have to develop that yourself by having a look at different finishes. Pick your finish up, take it, get it from your hardware store or supplier, and have a little play with it. They're not that expensive, and if you end up with a whole range of things, you can test stuff to see how you go, right? So that's the best way to go about it. And I've tested these over the period of time and found that I quite like these. I like the look of them. When you put one coat on, you get a different effect. You get two coats, you get a different effect again. So have a think about it and have a play with it, and make up your own mind as to what you want to do. Now, inside here, what I've done is I've decanted some of the Livos oil into a jar. And what I've got here is I've got some paper towel. I've just rolled it up, and I'm just going to put it in the rebate. It's in the little trench there. Remember, we're not slopping heaps and heaps of finish on, so just doing this. That'll just stop it getting in there. And the reason for that is because we're going to put a little bit of glue in there. All right, and if you've got a finish in there, you can't actually get the glue to stick. Okay, so it won't work. Then again, it depends on the finish you're using. If you're using a lacquer finish, if you're spraying it with a lacquer finish, and some people do that, and because of the effect they want, you'll find that most types of glues, or not most, but some types of glues will actually stick to a lacquer finish. Things like the super glue and araldite, they will stick to a hard finish. So we just get this in here. It's a little bit fiddly, but yeah, you get the picture. It's what we're doing now is just making sure that everything is going to be in place, in the right place at the right time. Okay, now we just go ahead and we paint all that. The beauty about nailing that back on is we don't have to wait for gluing time. If I was making something where the glue was important or the glue was an integral part of the structure of the thing, I'd probably wait. So it's just a matter of brushing in here. I don't know if Pam can get in there with the camera. It's just now I'm not putting a lot on. I'm putting enough on to seal it. And that's basically all I want to do inside the cabinet. Because let's face it, the cabinet is going to sit on a shelf in a room. So it's going to be not in the weather, you might say. I should have a pair of rubber gloves on, but I'll do that in a minute because I've got to finish off, wipe all this excess out of here. You notice I'm trying not to get too much around the paper towel. Again, the inside of the box was, before we actually built the box frame, I've finished the inside of the carcass with 800 grit sandpaper, and then while you were sleeping I gave it a little bit of a dose of 1000 bit by hand, so it was you can see now the colour of this cedar is actually quite nice. It's a lighter version of the cedar I've used in the past, and you'll find that with different timbers that they will be all one colour, and then the next batch you get a different colour altogether, coming from a different part of the tree, and or a different area where it's growing. So just checking to see where everything is. In here, everything is nice in there at the moment. Now I'm just going to let that sit for a few minutes. Normally I'd let it sit for an hour or so, but we haven't got an hour in the show. So I'm just going to let that sit, and while I'm doing that, I'll shift that. I'll sit this up here. I'll do the shelves. Now when I do the shelves, I'm going to have to use a little pair of gloves. So you can see the difference in the colour on that box. It's quite significant where the lighter stuff is. You know, you can see the comparison between the front and the inside of the box. It's quite different, and it will look like that on the outside of the box once we get the finish on it. When I do the outside of the box, I'm going to use the countertop oil, but it's a little harder finishing, and it finishes harder. Now here, all I want to do here is I want to put a finish on the top and the bottom of the box and the back edge. Now I've marked the back edges of the boxes. I've got a little pencil mark there to mark the back of the box so that I know exactly which bit's going where. So when I paint this, keep away from your joint. So it's just a matter of keeping away from there, because it's going to have a little bit of glue in it, and we want the glue to actually activate and to be able to work it. Again, same process here, that everything got sanded to about 800 and then hand sanded to 1000. If you want to put 2 or 3 coats on, by all means do that. It just takes a little bit longer to put your box together. Okay, so this is the top one. So the back edge of that. A bit of this. These are the times when patience is a virtue. So I've been told. So work it in. so there's the first one. I probably should have done a few of these before I started here today, but I never got the chance. It looks like next week is going to be all drawers. We'll, this is number 2. So all about the drawers. What I'm going to do with the drawers is the side panels on the drawers are going to end up with a different coloured timber on them, just to give a bit of highlight to the drawers themselves, to make the joints stand out. So a couple of other different reasons for doing it. I'll explain those as we go. But it's it will be what have we got here? Number 3. As you can see, it hasn't taken me all that long, really. Just a few minutes. It's all the preparation beforehand that's important. Back edge. Usually I try to make sure that the back edge is probably the worst bit of the of the shelf. It's right up against the back panel in the cabinet, and it's not seen. Also try to make sure that if there's any faults in the timber itself that I've overlooked in the processing, is on the bottom of the shelf rather than sitting on the top of the shelf where it can be seen. Okay, last one. So that internal piece, that internal finishing that I just did in the box there, it'll be well and truly soaked in by now. That's my back edge. I'm not doing the whole of the box, like the whole, all of the bits and pieces. I'm not doing the front edge of this because I may need to redress them. Depends on how they fit in again. Looks pretty, doesn't it? It's quite nice that timber. Really impressed with it. Now a piece of cloth. Make sure you've got a clean piece of cloth. I'll let that sit while I prep this. This is a matter of taking out all of my pieces of paper towel. I'll keep those because I've got 2 more boxes to do. And now it's just a matter of wiping out the excess. You can see now it actually looks quite nice in there. Excuse me. Okay, turn it up the right way. Now it's just a matter of gluing in the shelves. You can see when you look right into the box, you can see that there's no finish in the trenches. You can see they're all clear, which means that the glue will adhere to it. I'm not going to put a lot of glue in there, but I do want it to stick. So we lay that on its back. I'll take number 4 and we'll give it a wipe the excess off. See, it's cedar is quite a nice timber to work with. It's has some really nice qualities, and it's lightweight as well. So that's number 4. So that's going to go into here. Now, with the glue, when I put the glue on, this is my front edge, right? This is the back edge. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue here on the back edge. Don't need much. Both sides. And you'll notice I've only done half of the rebate. All right. Do the same on this side. It's only a small amount, it's not very much. Doesn't need a lot. You've got a dovetail rebate that is going to give you lots and lots of support. Right, so that's ready to go. Now when I do the inside here, I'm just doing the top edge. Now if you get a little bit of excess over the sticking out of it, because you've put a finish on there, nothing's going to stick to it. You can get your piece of rag and just wipe the excess off the top. And I've only done halfway down. The reason for that is we don't want a whole lot of squeeze out in the box. Just make sure I've got the top side up and the bottom side down. Now, there we go. That's shelf number 1, and it's all the way down. And you can see I've got very little squeeze out. Well, actually there's none at all really in there. And that's all the way to the back. So a little bit more there. Knocked it out. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. A little bit more glue, wherever I put it. Don't want lots. Number 3. The excess off.
Just turn the box around, so you can actually see what you're doing.
Like that.
That's better.
Okay, a little bit of glue here. A bit of glue here. That's the back, that's the bottom. So as you can see, not a lot of glue is used. Just enough to stop it from rattling when you pick it up. That's what I was told once when I asked somebody why they only use a little bit of glue. Oh, I don't want it to rattle when I pick it up. I've forgotten which side's the bottom. That side. Doesn't go in straight, it tends to kink a little bit. That's gone in beautifully. Shelf. Might even get a little bit of work done on the on the drawers today. Bit in there. Now what I'm trying to do here is I'm not actually trying to put a lot of glue on the end grain section, because it doesn't, working on the end grain, it doesn't really glue very well. More so on the long grain. So just go careful when you, oh look at that one. When they go straight, it's just a pleasure when they fit like that. And the last one. You can see the space is already closed up quite considerably now. There's not much room in there. And my big pudgy fingers don't go in there very well. So putting your finish on before you actually assemble it. You can let it sit and dry if you like before you actually start playing around with assembly. I just don't have the time right now to do that, which is something I would do quite often. Just put a finish on it, let it sit for a little while, and then check and do it. I don't have the time at the moment. See how this one goes in. Lovely. A little bit of excess on there. And there we have the shelves in our little box. Okay, so they're all glued in. Now I just have to let that sit and dry. So when it dries, I'll then redress the top edges of all of those and sand the back of it, and that will be the carcass completed. So then it's just a matter of putting together the drawers, or building the drawers. Now the drawers, we've got 10 minutes, so I might actually spend a little bit of time and just sort of show you how I go about doing the drawers. But a fairly simple process. Before we start working with the drawers, what I want to do is I want to tell you, Chris Clark wrote an article some time ago, or a few months ago, in Woodsmith. Now this is Woodsmith issue 168. You can see it's the one with the plain fellow on the front, mastering spline joints, so it's a way of doing something different. So that's the issue. This is the article. Now the article actually talks about using a centre line when you're cutting dovetails on a number of drawers for the same cabinet that are all the different width. Right? So they're all different depths, those drawers there. And if you look carefully, you'll see that all the dovetails are all evenly spaced out along the the thickness of the piece of the drawer. Now, Chris has come up with this way of doing things. It's a very Japanese type technique where you're using a centre line to actually draw stuff. So I'm going to have a little look at that. If you want to get the article 168 Woodsmith, that will give you the article to actually have a look at, and probably you can have a little play with it and see if it works for you. But I'm going to have a go at it, and I haven't done it yet, so I'm going to give it a shot and see if see how it works with my technique for these drawers. Because when you look at the drawers, you will see that they're all different sizes. This one's 35, this one's 40, I think that's 35, 40, 45, 50 and 70. So they're all different depths. I might just measure those and check those so that I'm telling you the right things. So the top one is 35, the next one is 40, this one's 45, that one's 50, and the bottom one is just over 65. Okay, so they're all different sizes. Now I did that deliberately because I wanted to have that different effect. What will happen is I will end up with two, because of the thickness of the material at the top and the bottom. I'll have different thickness on the front fascia of the drawer, but the drawers themselves are all different depths for different things. So if you're giving it to somebody who has a whole heap of bangles, they can obviously put them in the bottom. If you're giving your box to somebody who has lots of different things, well then of course you can swap and change. So that's what's going to happen. Now, the timber I'm going to do, what I'm going to do with the drawers. I've got one here from a cabinet that I made earlier. You'll notice, if I just pull out the bits, you'll notice that the sides of the drawer are actually a different timber, a contrasting timber to what I've got. The front is cedar, the little knob is a piece of ebony. Okay, so we'll be turning some of those hopefully. But the back and the front are cedar, the front panel is cedar, the bottom of the box is also cedar. So I've kept the theme of cedar and just put two different coloured timbers into the sides, just so that we can highlight the dovetails. Right. That's quite a nice little effect. Now, quite a large number of cabinet makers that I speak to often use this technique to show blind dovetails. So that's essentially a blind dovetail. Now the reason they use this technique is because cost is a big factor in making drawers and cabinets. So you need to think about your timbers and the reasons why you put different timbers together. I put them together to highlight things and to give a bit of contrast to the drawer when you open it. So it's going to be mix and match different colours so that we can have quite a nice drawer. And also I've got the internal bits and pieces that fit in. Now I always make those so you can take them out, if you want to clean the drawer or do something with it. You can see that's again highlighted it, nice little contrast. I just turn it around so you can see the little knob on the top. Okay, so it's quite a nice little drawer. I've also put a little feature on the top edge of it, which is done with the router, and I'll show you how to do that too, because one of the cabinets we will do will have that feature on it. Now the timbers I'm going to use, this is what I'm going to be using. On the coachwood box that I showed you earlier, I'm going to use this timber here. Now I don't use a lot of it because I don't have a lot of it. I've got some, and this is a perfect place to use it. This is leatherwood, right? The leatherwood, and I'm not very good at saying the botanical names, but Eucraphia lucida. Now, it's a Tasmanian timber. As you can see, it's got quite a lot of grain in it. It's also quite clear, and the lovely colour in it is the pinks and that. This is not, this is part of the growth of the timber. It's not actually a fault in the timber. And when you put a bit of finish on it, a bit of colour, you can see that it colours up very, very nicely. That's got Livos oil on it. So that's what I've done there. The timber that I'm going to use for the front and the back of the cabinets for our cedar boxes is just cedar, and it's similar colour to the top of the box. The sides of the box for the cedars is going to be of the drawers. Sides of the drawers is going to be silver ash. Now, this stuff is rare. It's hard to find, it's hard to get. So if I put it into a box like this, that box becomes then an heirloom with timbers that are quite rare and quite hard to get hold of. Now, if you can get hold of it, make sure it's nice and clean so that it's got nice clear look about it. You will find that in some cases it's got lots of marks and black marks in it. They stand out when you put them together. If you like that look, well, then by all means use it. But I tend to like a nice, clean, clear, clean pieces of cedar, pieces of silver ash. A mate to this one is claret ash. You can also use claret ash or crow's ash. They are also timbers that are white. If you can't find those timbers, jacaranda. Now, I was given a couple of pieces of jacaranda which I sold to a customer the other day, and they were crystal clear clean. And it's not a timber that you use very often, so, or see very often. But if you can get hold of something like that, they're your white timbers, right? So have a look at that. Now, all of this stuff is dressed to 7 mil. So I'm going to be using 7mm for all of the drawers. That way I can actually use my rebate cutter to cut the floor in the box and go from there. So next week I will have some of this cut up for you, and we will get sorted. So I think what we'll do is we'll end it there rather than me having to little fiddle around with it, and I will show you how to put the drawers together, or we'll get started on the drawers next week. So hopefully that will do, and we'll catch you all next week. So have a good week, everybody, and stay safe, and we will get the drawers done next week. But hopefully this will be dry.